What if I told you that Native Americans had access to vegetables so powerful that colonizers actually banned some of them? Not because they were dangerous, but because of what they could do. These aren't exotic imports. They're American. They're forgotten. And there's a disturbing reason you've never seen them in any grocery store. Here's the thing about potatoes. They're not even American. Not originally, anyway. But there was something growing along riverbanks from Florida to Canada long before Columbus got lost looking for India. Ground nuts. And honestly, they might be better than potatoes. These starchy little tubers grow on vines, usually tangled up in wet woodland areas where most people never think to look. When you roast them, they taste like a potato had a baby with a sweet potato. Then that baby developed a nutty personality. Weird description, I know, but accurate. The Wampanoag actually saved the Pilgrims with these things. Those first brutal winters, ground nuts kept colonists alive. You'd think we'd remember that. Nope, forgot about them completely. And here's what really gets me. Ground nuts pack 3 times more protein than regular potatoes. 3 times. For a root vegetable, that's basically unheard of. So why aren't they in every grocery store? They take 2 to 3 years to mature fully. Commercial farmers looked at that timeline, laughed, and planted something faster. Can't really blame them. Time is money. But small farms in the Northeast are bringing them back. $8 a pound at farmers markets. Worth it? Well, that depends on what else you've been missing. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Tepary beans are tiny. I mean, seriously small. But don't let that fool you because these little legumes have been thriving in the Sonoran Desert for over 4,000 years. The Tohono O'odham people knew something we're just figuring out. These beans don't just survive drought. They actually prefer it. While your garden beans throw a tantrum without daily watering, tepary beans produce their best harvests on just 3 to 4 inches of rainfall per year. That's not a typo. And the weird part is, modern farmers basically ignored them. Why? Because pinto beans and black beans give bigger yields. Nobody stopped to think that maybe a crop requiring almost zero irrigation might be worth something. Here's what really got my attention, though. Scientists discovered that tepary beans contain special fibers that slow down sugar absorption in your gut. For people managing diabetes, these might be the most helpful beans on the planet. The taste? Earthy, slightly sweet, almost buttery when you slow cook them the traditional way. Native Seed Search in Arizona saved over 50 varieties from extinction in the 80s. But tepary beans aren't the only forgotten food hiding in plain sight. Here's the thing. You've probably pulled this plant out of your garden 100 times, cursed at it, tossed it in the compost, lamb's quarters. That weed you've been fighting, dozens of Native American tribes considered it a prized vegetable. The Cherokee ate it. The Iroquois ate it. The Navajo ate it. And here we are, yanking it out like it personally offended us. Now here's where it gets ridiculous. This plant contains more calcium than milk, more iron than spinach, more vitamin A than carrots. Ounce for ounce, it's basically a multivitamin with leaves. The taste? Mild, slightly mineral, kind of like spinach, but without that weird chalky coating on your teeth afterward. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And get this, a single plant produces up to 75,000 seeds per season. Tribes ground those seeds into flour for bread. Meanwhile, we're over here buying expensive superfood powders while this stuff grows free in every single state. Every single one. Young leaves go raw in salads. Mature leaves cook down like spinach. It's probably sprouting in your yard right now, but lamb's quarters isn't even the most nutritious weed on this list. Now here's one that sounds fancy, but couldn't be simpler. Sunchokes. Despite the name Jerusalem artichoke, they're not from Jerusalem and they're not artichokes. They're actually tubers from a sunflower native to North America. The Jerusalem part? That's just a mangled pronunciation of girasole, Italian for sunflower. Somebody heard it wrong 400 years ago and we're still stuck with it. The Iroquois and other eastern woodland tribes cultivated massive sunchoke patches. They'd roast them in fire pits or dry them for winter. Smart move, honestly. Here's what makes them genuinely interesting. Unlike potatoes, sunchokes contain inulin instead of starch. Your body processes it completely differently, so your blood sugar stays stable. Diabetics, take notes. The taste? Crisp and nutty when raw, like a water chestnut met an artichoke and had a baby. Roasted, they turn creamy and slightly sweet. European explorers brought them to France in the 1600s, where they became trendy. Meanwhile, Americans forgot they existed. The French kept eating them. We forgot we had them first. One warning, though. Plant sunchokes and you're basically married to them forever. But that commitment is nothing compared to our next vegetable, which literally grows in sidewalk cracks. Here's the thing about omega-3 supplements. Americans spend billions on fish oil capsules every single year. Billions. And meanwhile, there's a plant growing in sidewalk cracks that contains more omega-3s than any other leafy vegetable ever tested. Purslane. You've probably stepped on it 100 times without knowing you were crushing a nutritional powerhouse. This succulent little ground hugger has thick, paddle-shaped leaves that native peoples from Mexico all the way to the Southwest gathered every summer. They knew something we forgot. The stems? They've got this pleasant lemony crunch. Perfect for pickling. The leaves went into stews because they thicken things up naturally, kind of like okra, but without that slimy reputation, okra can't seem to shake. Pueblo peoples got clever with the seeds too. Mixed them with cornmeal to make bread that was more nutritious and lasted longer without going stale. 2 birds, 1 stone. Now here's what really gets me. Europeans still eat purslane. Mexicans eat it regularly, but try finding it on an American restaurant menu. Good luck. We literally pay premium prices for supplements while this free food grows in our driveways. But purslane isn't the only weed we've been ignoring. Wait until you hear about ramps. Ramps are basically the divas of the vegetable world. They show up for about 3 weeks in spring, demand specific growing conditions, and then disappear until next year. The Cherokee called these wild leeks the first green of spring. And honestly, after months of eating dried beans and preserved meat, anything fresh probably tasted like a miracle. Here's the thing about ramps. They only grow in shaded Appalachian forests with perfect moisture levels. You can't farm them commercially. Believe me, people have tried. The plants just refuse to cooperate on any meaningful scale. The flavor hits you like a combination of garlic and onion that got into a bar fight. Aggressive doesn't begin to cover it. Your breath will announce you entered a room for a solid 24 hours afterward. But the Cherokee weren't just eating them for taste. They used ramps as a spring tonic, believing the pungent greens cleanse the blood after heavy winter eating. Spring cleaning for your insides, basically. Now, here's where it gets complicated. Trendy restaurants discovered ramps about 15 years ago, and suddenly everyone wanted them. Overharvesting became such a problem that some states actually had to restrict collection on public lands. Speaking of water-loving plants that fed famous explorers, Wapato might be the strangest vegetable on this list to actually harvest. You wade into a cold pond barefoot, feel around in the mud with your toes, and pop the tubers loose. They float to the surface. That's it. That's the technique. The Chinook people perfected this method thousands of years ago. And honestly, nobody's come up with anything better since. These duck potatoes were so valuable in the Pacific Northwest that tribes used them as actual currency. Not money, currency. You could trade Wapato for salmon, tools, whatever you needed. Lewis and Clark ate these things constantly during their miserable winter at Fort Clatsop. Clark wrote in his journal that they tasted like small waxy potatoes. High praise from a guy who was basically freezing and starving. Here's the frustrating part, though. Wetland drainage wiped out most Wapato habitats during the 20th century. Developers looked at marshes and saw mosquito breeding grounds. Native peoples looked at the same marshes and saw grocery stores. One important cooking note. You absolutely must cook these before eating. Raw Wapato has a bitter, peppery bite that disappears completely with heat. The good news? Some wetland restoration projects are bringing Wapato back. Speaking of disappearing habitats, the next vegetable faced an even stranger threat. Verdolagas might sound fancy, but it's basically purslane that went to finishing school. While wild purslane crawls along the ground like it's avoiding eye contact, Verdolagas grows upright with thick, meaty stems that actually look like something you'd intentionally put on a plate. The Aztecs ranked it among their top green vegetables right alongside amaranth. High praise from people who built floating gardens. Here's what makes it special. This plant laughs at summer heat. When your spinach bolts and your lettuce turns bitter, Verdolagas keeps producing tender greens like nothing's wrong. It's basically the vegetable equivalent of that coworker who stays calm during every crisis. And the texture? When you saute it with garlic and chile, something magical happens. The leaves release this silky quality that coats everything in the pan. Not slimy, silky. Big difference. Now here's the part that might annoy you. This forgotten vegetable sits in Mexican grocery stores across America right now. Fresh, cheap, waiting for you. It's probably the easiest item on this entire list to actually find and try tonight. But if you think Verdolagas is impressive, wait until you hear about a bulb that transforms into candy when you cook it. Okay, here's where things get interesting. The Nez Perce didn't just harvest Camas bulbs, they fought wars over them. These gorgeous blue flowering plants covered meadows across the Pacific Northwest, and when harvest time came, entire tribes would travel hundreds of miles to reach their traditional gathering grounds. We're talking massive annual events, hundreds of people, weeks of work. But here's the thing that blew my mind. Raw Camas tastes like absolutely nothing special. Starchy, bland, you'd spit it out. The magic happens underground. Tribes would dig earth ovens, fill them with Camas bulbs, and roast them for anywhere from 24 to 72 hours straight. During that slow cooking process, the inulin in the bulbs converts to fructose. Basically, you're turning a boring tuber into something that tastes like brown sugar candy. Now, the scary part, there's a plant called death Camas that looks almost identical. Same leaves, same shape. The only difference? White flowers instead of blue. Get them confused and you're in serious trouble. Between that danger and the fact that 90% of Camas prairies have been destroyed by farming and development, this one's nearly impossible to find today. But the next vegetable? You might be standing on it right now. Indian cucumber is one of those plants that sounds made up, but it's completely real. Bite into the root and you'll swear someone buried a fresh cucumber in the forest floor. Same crisp texture, same mild, refreshing taste, maybe even a little sweeter. Eastern woodland tribes like the Iroquois and Menominee knew this trick centuries ago. They dig these roots as trailside snacks during long journeys. No cooking required, no preparation. Just pull it up, brush off the dirt, and eat. Identifying it is surprisingly easy, actually. Look for a single stem with two distinct whorls of leaves, one near the middle and one at the top. That pattern is pretty unique. Here's the catch, though. Each plant produces just one tiny root, so harvesting it kills the whole thing. No regeneration, no seeds, done. This is why modern foragers treat it more like a novelty than actual food. You'd need to destroy dozens of plants just for a small handful. Not exactly sustainable. The plant grows from Georgia all the way up to Quebec in rich, shaded forests. Most people walk right past it because, honestly, it looks completely ordinary. But speaking of plants worth fighting over, the next one actually started wars. Breadroot shaped the entire rhythm of life on the Great Plains. And I mean literally shaped it. The Lakota, Cheyenne, and Pawnee didn't just enjoy this starchy root, they built their calendars around it. Women would mark locations during summer bloom when the purple flowers made them easy to spot. Then they'd return later with digging sticks and parfleches ready to fill. Here's what gets wild. The timing of breadroot harvest actually dictated when tribes went buffalo hunting. Both had narrow seasonal windows, so planting one meant planting the other. That's how important this vegetable was. When dried and pounded into flour, breadroot stores for years. Years. No refrigeration, no special containers, just dried roots that could save your family during a brutal winter. Pretty clever backup plan, right? Lewis and Clark tried it during their expedition. Their review? An indifferent turnip. Harsh critics, those two. But here's the thing. They were eating it fresh. Cooked or dried, the flavor transforms into something actually pleasant. So why aren't we growing fields of it today? Agricultural plowing destroyed the prairie habitat breadroot needs. And despite decades of attempts, nobody has successfully domesticated it for commercial farming. But there's another forgotten vegetable that gold rush miners literally depended on for survival. Miner's lettuce looks like someone glued a tiny lily pad onto a stem and called it a day. Weird little plant. But here's the thing. It might be the most perfectly designed snack food nature ever created. Ohlone and Miwok tribes in California gathered these delicate greens every spring when winter supplies ran low. No cooking required, no preparation at all. Just pluck and eat. Then the gold rush happened. Thousands of miners flooded California with zero knowledge of local plants and even less access to fresh produce. Scurvy started dropping men left and right. Native people showed them this odd-looking green growing everywhere in shaded spots, and suddenly, miners' lettuce became the original California health food. Here's what made it so valuable. The stuff contains more vitamin C per serving than oranges. More! And it grows like crazy after winter rains. The taste? Mild, slightly sweet, tender as butter. My grandmother would have called it pleasant, which from her generation was basically a 5-star review. The wildest part is you can still find it growing in backyards and parks across California from February through May. Free salad just sitting there. But speaking of free food hiding in plain sight, the next plant was basically nature's spice rack. Wild ginger grows flat against the forest floor with these heart-shaped leaves that look almost romantic. But dig underneath? That's where it gets interesting. The root tastes shockingly similar to the ginger you buy at grocery stores. Here's the twist, though. They're completely unrelated plants, not even distant cousins. It's like discovering your neighbor's cat meows in the exact same pitch as yours. Total coincidence. Eastern woodland tribes figured this out centuries ago and used it to spice up venison and other game meats. The flavor hits different than Asian ginger. Spicier, more peppery, almost aggressive, honestly. And here's something the Cherokee knew that we forgot. Wild ginger masked off flavors in meat that was starting to turn. Basically, nature's flavor cover-up before refrigeration existed. Pretty clever, right? Now, why isn't this stuff everywhere? Because it's stubborn. Asian ginger grows fast from rhizomes you can chop and replant. Wild ginger, it spreads at the pace of a sloth on vacation. Takes years to establish a decent patch. Sustainable foragers only take small portions from each colony since the plants need serious recovery time. But wild ginger might be the most practical forgotten vegetable compared to what's coming next. Here's where things get really interesting. Hopniss is technically just another name for groundnuts, but some tribes use this word specifically for something most people don't even know exists: the seeds. Yeah, those vines produce actual bean-like pods. And these seeds, about 25% protein. You can roast them like peanuts or grind them into flour that puts wheat to shame nutritionally. But wait, it gets better. The entire plant is edible. Tubers in fall and winter. Young shoots in spring. Flowers in summer. Seeds in late autumn. It's like nature designed a year-round grocery store and nobody told us. Agricultural scientists in the 1980s got genuinely excited about Hopniss. They studied it seriously as a potential new American crop. Then funding dried up. Classic. A single established vine pumps out 5 to 10 pounds of tubers annually. No fertilizer, no pesticides, no irrigation. And because it's a legume, it actually improves soil fertility while producing food. My garden should be so generous. We basically had a perfect crop sitting right here in North America for thousands of years. We just forgot. Speaking of forgotten, our final vegetable might be the most overlooked of all. The greens everyone ignores while chasing trendy seeds. Here's where things get a little frustrating. Quinoa became this massive health food craze. Celebrities eat it, gyms recommend it. Meanwhile, the leafy greens from the exact same plant, completely ignored. Amaranth greens were a staple for the Aztecs, Maya, and Pueblo peoples for thousands of years. They ate these leaves as often as we eat lettuce, maybe more. And nutritionally, they blow spinach out of the water. More protein than any common leafy green, packed with calcium, iron, vitamins A and C. The whole package. The taste is peppery with a mineral kick. Bold enough to handle garlic, chili, whatever you throw at it. Unlike spinach, it doesn't turn into sad green mush after 30 seconds of heat. Now here's the dark part. Spanish conquistadors actually banned amaranth cultivation because it was used in Aztec religious ceremonies. Centuries of agricultural knowledge nearly vanished because of that decision. Thankfully, Asian and African cultures kept growing it. Walk into any Caribbean market and ask for callaloo. That's amaranth greens. Chinese markets sell it too, so while everyone obsesses over the seeds, the leaves sit there waiting. Cheaper, easier to grow, and honestly, just as impressive.